Well, Darren, what about you?
How's things?
Too bad. All good, ready to rock?
All good, ready to go, yeah.
Happy
Yeah,
days.
that's it. I was panicking there. I didn't think this was going to work properly, but
It's
all
always the
good.
way. The wee test
Yeah.
run works fine, and then when it comes to it, then everything just crashes.
Yes, yeah. No, it's all good.
Oh, that's good. Happy days. And thanks a million for joining us here on the Keepie Uppies podcast. Richie, it's usually myself and Richie.
Great.
Richie actually started up this podcast 2 years ago during lockdown, just out of pure boredom. And
Great.
it started off, I suppose, just he was interviewing guys just sort of around kind of the Lurgan area, sort of involved with football coaches, referees, players. And then we just
Yes.
decided to kind of open it up, we'd Whitey Anderson, the ex-Ballymallard manager there last week, and obviously delighted to have yourself. And we've kind of had sort of a Newry kind of flavour to it, because we had the gaffer, Darren, on there
That's
a few
right,
months
yes.
ago, and
Yeah,
with
yeah.
a couple of ex-Newry City players, Mark McCann and Kieran O'Kane. So
Yeah.
you're continuing the Newry kind of flavour to it. It's almost turning into sort of like a wee Newry City kind of podcast, if anything.
Right.
So it is. So we're gonna get straight into it.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all.
So we're gonna start off with. I already know the answer to this, but for those listening here that don't know, who's your football team, and I suppose who was your hero growing up?
Yeah, well, at the minute, I suppose it's unfortunate for me, but I'm a United man, so I am. So, I've supported United probably from. It'll take me to talking about who my hero was. So my football hero was Roy Keane growing up, and he was the reason I started supporting United. And I think when he joined, I was about 7 or 8 when he joined United, and I remember watching him in a few games. He was only a young kid himself at the time. I remember thinking, wow, that's a player. Like, just his attitude, his determination, and then obviously his quality on the ball as well. But when I watched Roy Keane playing a few times, I'd made my mind up then, so that I was a United supporter. And, because, a lot of my mates would have supported Liverpool or United or whoever because their parents did. But my dad wasn't a United supporter. He was actually a Leeds supporter when he was younger, so he was. So
Right.
I made my own mind up and went with United.
And
So I did.
so, what about United? Sort of this season, it's been a bit of a disaster, hasn't it? Like, but I suppose next season it can't get any worse. Let's be honest. But where do you think it's kind of went wrong this season, or I suppose where do you start?
Exactly. Where do you start? I suppose from a supporter's point of view, like everything, I suppose you have to take the bad with the good sometimes.
Yeah.
We had a fair run. I started supporting United in the early 90s when they were started to become untouchable, and then we were spoilt at the time. I suppose maybe Liverpool supporters might look back in a few years and go,
Exactly,
around
yeah.
this time we were spoilt. So, yeah, where do you start? How long is it going to take to get back to that, or will they ever get back to that? That they were, because you're competing with teams like the Liverpools and the Man Cities and that nowadays, and it's going to be difficult. But I think with getting a bit of security there with a manager is going to be important to start with, and then building a squad of players who have that will to win, and that bit of quality as well. So it'll remain to be seen, I suppose, going into the next few seasons now, whether Ten Hag can do the business or not.
Yeah, I suppose time will tell. If you had a couple of Roy Keanes, you'd be doing all right.
Yeah, or even just one. Would take one at the minute.
But yeah, as I said, next season, I suppose it can't get any worse. But as you said, it kind of was the opposite route for me as a Liverpool fan. We were, we had a couple of maybe decent cup teams for a couple of seasons, but by and large, we were always a million miles away from United.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, as you said, I'm trying to enjoy these times as much as it was difficult on Saturday night there. I'm still
Yeah.
trying to get over that one, but I suppose we won the double. I keep telling myself the double cup champions, but anyway, maybe not the double that I wanted.
Yeah.
So
That's it. Well, I watched the game with my brother-in-law the other night. He's a Liverpool supporter. And he gave me grief all season about United, so it was a good chance for me to rub it in, you know. But we'll not talk any more about that.
no, I'm getting depressed here. I was getting tortured by about 6 WhatsApp groups from United men. You know, I just had to switch off the phone.
Yeah.
You know, I've only switched it back on to interview you, the King.
Right.
So to get back to yourself then, so take us through kind of your youth football work our way up then, obviously to now with Newry. But who did you play for then, growing up?
So when I was younger, I joined. Funny, I only really started properly playing structured football when I was about 12 or 13 when I went to secondary school, and I joined a team called Midway United.
Yeah, that's good.
In Newry. Yeah, it is good we set up, and I had a fantastic. It was only through a few fellas I was at school with. You know, we would have played about in the playground and that, and they says to me, "So why don't you come down? You know, you'll enjoy it." Because I would have just played Gaelic when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went down, and it was actually, at the time, he's only a few years older than me, but Barry Gray, who manages Warren Point.
Yes, yeah.
At the minute, he was over the under 14s or 15s or whatever it was, whatever team we joined, himself and another fella, great guy, Barry Trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined it, and they really instilled a real sort of determination into the wee team that we had, you know, a real sort of good setup, will to win, good structured training, you know, and really a good positive environment when I joined, and I really liked the experience. So from there I kicked on, and I stayed with Midway United right through until I was about 17 when I moved to Newry City. It was under 18s, but it was about 16, 17, moved to Newry City under 18s. At the time, and I was only with the 18s reserves for about one season, and then I moved up into the first team. So I did. So I was very lucky in that sense. I was actually probably, if I'm being honest, Ray Byrne. Do you know Ray Byrne?
Yeah, heard the name. Yeah,
played reported down. He was actually talking about Roy Keane. He was at Nottingham Forest with Roy Keane, but he came back and he was sort of finishing his career when I was just breaking through, and he was playing a few games with the reserves. And I remember him pulling me aside and saying, I had a word with Roy McCready. He was the manager at the time. And he says, I told him you've been doing really well with the reserves and that he should be trying to push you on through. You know, and then there was obviously a bit of Barry Gray was actually the manager of the Newry reserves at the time as well, because he had moved from Midway there as well. So I got a wee bit of a push from them guys too, a wee bit of help. And when I went in, I never looked back. And from about 17, 18 years of age, I've been playing Irish League football then. So I've been very lucky in that sense.
But but you're in your own luck, I suppose, at the same time. You know, if those sort of guys are kind of recommending you to Roy McCready, who's no mug as well, he's obviously had a number of years at the top level. You know, he obviously earned it. And how did you find that step up? What did you find was the big difference? Was it fitness? Was it speed, strength, or all those things? What was the big difference?
Probably a combination of everything. Well, obviously there's a huge difference when you move from reserve football at a young age into first team football in terms of the technical ability of the players you then move in to play with. You know, it's a lot higher standard. Even nowadays, you know, you see young guys coming through from the reserves in to train with ourselves, and it takes a wee while to adapt because they move the ball quicker, they hold on to the ball better, they don't give it away as easily, you know. So it is, that's one of the things I would say was a big shock at the time, but I would always sort of pride myself on having a real high fitness level and a real high work rate and determination, and I really embraced that coming into the first team setup. I sort of went in, and you know, I always had the attitude when I went in, I was there to take somebody's place in the first team. I wasn't just there to make up a number. Yeah. You know, and that's what I like to see, and that's what I look for young guys coming through now as well. You know what, I young guys coming through every year and say, are you going to try and take my place? Are you going to try and take somebody's place in this? And you can sort of read them off that, you know, how determined they are in training. And so as I said, I embraced it myself. And I always sort of had that hard working attitude at a young age to keep myself fit. I don't really drink, never did. You know, it was more so looked after myself because I wanted to play sport, and looked after myself outside of sport, trained, done my extra bit of training, made sure I ate healthily, that sort of thing as well, you know, which all helped.
Fantastic. It kind of reminds me, I remember something, Stephen Gerrard actually said something very similar. I remember when he was on BT a few years back, just about when he was breaking through at Liverpool. And he said the exact same thing you said there, that, you know, he went in with the attitude, I'm going to push you out of the side. I think as he was coming through, there was the likes of Paul Ince and there was Jamie Redknapp and a couple of other midfielders at the time. And he was just like, I'm just going to push these lads out of the team. It's as simple as that. And I suppose you need to have that attitude as well.
Well, I think you do. You know, like as I say to myself, I would always say when I'm sort of self-assessing myself, I wouldn't have the greatest technical ability in the world as a player. You know what I mean? There's lots of players who I played with in the youth setup were technically a lot better than me, but they sort of faded away and died away because they probably didn't have a good enough work ethic.
Yeah.
You know, and I often say there was guys I played with at underage level, and even through the years there with Newry, with the ability they had, if they had a good attitude with work rate and that, they'd be away across in England, across the water. So I knew that I had to look after those other aspects and maximise them as much as I could, because I mightn't have as much technical ability as some of the other players coming through, and that sort of keeps you motivated and keeps you going.
And you talked about the young guys coming through. Do you kind of use them as kind of a motivator for you as well? If you maybe see like a young right back kind of coming through, yes, of course, you're realistic as well. You're not going to be playing forever, and you want these young lads coming through the same way you did. But equally, does it kind of motivate you, right? This young fella isn't going to take my place.
Oh yeah. It has to. I've said to myself, the minute that I don't start, that I'm not thinking like that, it'll be time to hang up the boots, you know. And I think everybody needs to have that. You know, nobody wants a young kid coming through and taking their place now.
Yeah.
It will happen at some stage, I'm sure, you know. But for now, as you say, you know, I'm looking at them and saying, just not yet. But hopefully, anyway.
And I remember actually when I was actually trying to hook out a decent photo of you, just obviously put on the profile. So went on to the usual Google images. Next thing it came up, this image of, it looked like a scene out of Game of Thrones. Did you watch Game of Thrones? Do you ever?
No, I don't. But I've seen the images you're talking about a lot.
There's a classic scene in Game of Thrones of you should YouTube it. It's the Mountain versus, I think you call him the Viper, where basically the Mountain is gouging the eyes out of the Viper, and I remember just seeing this image. He goes, God save us, that isn't Darren there getting, I don't know what that guy's doing to him. So I clicked in, and obviously I'm sure you remember it, the Larne match in the Irish Cup.
Yes,
That sounded like an absolutely brutal match, and it had to be abandoned and everything.
Yeah, it did. Well, lucky enough, we got the win for it in the end. You know, because it was abandoned with a few minutes to go only. And funny enough, because it's a good job it stood, because do you know Matty Hazley?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he scored a wonder goal that day, so he did, and there was talk that it was going to be sort of null and void. I think he scored from our own half, so he did, and there was a big panic over that, but it stood in the end, I think. But anyway, yeah, that's one of those games, or at least the end of the game, that you try to forget, I suppose, that you don't want in football. And see, to be fair, the media images probably made it out worse than it actually was at the time. You know, it was one of those ones. But look, there's always times in football where things like that happen, and it's important that you can move on from it, isn't it?
That's it. And then, of course, you probably experienced then the club folding. That must have been kind of a difficult period for the club, and especially you being a local fella as well. That must have probably hit you a bit harder.
Yeah, it did, because as I said to you, you know, I was there from I was a youth, and I'd played there. I think I'd spoken to one of the supporters about this only recently. I was going into my testimonial year with Newry, the year the club folded.
Is that right?
Yeah, it would have been. I think the year even that it folded, we'd started that season, and that would have been my testimonial year or something. And then it went into administration or whatever. The club folded anyway, and I never got that, and I moved on to Warren Point then for a few years because I had no club basically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was from my own personal point of view. Yeah, it was huge because I'm a Newry City supporter. Mm-hmm. It's the only sort of club locally that I followed my whole life. Played for them. Had loads of great times with them in those years leading up to that. And then lucky enough, from up and back, I've had lots of good times since as well.
Yeah. What about those times then when you took a wee sabbatical at Warren Point? They must have been enjoyable times as well. I'm sure tough leaving Newry, but you no other choice. You didn't have a club, but what were those couple of seasons like at Warren Point?
Yeah, well, this is it. As I said to you, Barry Gray is a really good friend of mine outside of football even.
Mm-hmm.
And when Newry sort of folded, I suppose Warren Point took advantage because we were pushing for promotion in the championship under Pat McGibbon, and then Darren had taken over. Pat had left and Darren Mullen had just taken over.
Yeah.
And we were pushing for promotion that year. We were probably one of the favourites for it. And then all of that happened. So midway through that season, or a few months into the season, whatever, Warren Point, I think, seen an opportunity to get a few sort of experienced players in the championship, to move on. So, and we had nowhere else to go, and it was a chance to stay at a high level and play. We all had offers, but we were all local guys. We'd all played for Newry. I didn't want to go anywhere. I always seen myself as sort of a one club man, and it was an opportunity to play at a high level. So we moved to Warren Point, and I think we got promoted in our first season. We moved halfway through the season to Warren Point and ended up getting them promoted. 6 or 7 of us, along with the quality players who were already there with Warren Point.
Yeah.
So we had good times, good people at Warren Point on that. But as I always say, only for the club folding, I would never have left Newry. And then I was always looking over my shoulder at what they were doing and looking forward to hopefully getting back someday.
Yeah. And of course, Warren Point, it was just unfortunate. Obviously, you kind of trading places between Warren Point getting relegated and Newry getting promoted would have been nice. I'm sure it would have been a tasty match, But sure, hopefully Warren Point will be getting promoted this time next year. And then it was kind of Newry City AFC reborn under Darren Mullen, and they had to basically start right from the bottom in Mid-Ulster Intermediate B, so far down that they ended up playing against me and Richie at one point. That's how low you got. But it is what it is. But I always remember that the one thing that kind of stuck out from that Newry team, they were by far the best team in Intermediate B, and I think they took 2 seasons to jump out of Intermediate A. Just super fit, super professional, and just seemed to be just a real, just determined group of lads, and obviously pretty well organised under Darren, and worked their way up obviously into intermediate football. So when did you then rejoin Newry? Was it when they got back up into the championship? The championship
was when I came back. So I'd always been watching out because, as I said to you, when the club folded, I was devastated, and then when we reformed, I was delighted to see it. But I had been playing with Warren Point in the Premiership at that stage, and when my dad would always say to me, when I was younger, try and stay at the highest level you can for as long as you can, because yourself, some players drop down to lower leagues and they never get out of them. Then, and I always had that in my mind. So I was watching Newry, and they were getting promotion after promotion, as you say there. Darren has a great knowledge of what's required in a change room. He's a great recipe to keep of what the balance should be always, and he always has been any time I've been there under him. And as you say there, he would have instilled that into them, that fighting spirit and that determination to get promotion after promotion, and he has that in himself. So I was watching out for them, and I seen them progress, and I was thinking to myself, this is going well. If it keeps going the way it's going, I could maybe get a wee move back at some stage. And then my final season under Warren Point, Barry Gray had left, and Matthew Tipton had taken over, and I wasn't feeling it as such. I just wasn't enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nothing to do with Warren Point. As I said to you, Warren Point have great people involved there, and I think a part of me was watching Newry also on the rise again and thinking, watching them from the side, they were having a real good time and it looked exciting, and their fan base was building up, and there was a lot of social media output from them and that, and it was interesting. And I was thinking to myself, maybe, if I can get a wee move back there, it'd be nice. So I got talking to Darren, and we agreed to come back then, and from there we kicked on. So I then came back the year we were in the Championship, and again promoted in my first season in the Championship back with Newry. Great squad of players there at the time, and really good season. So it was.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I watched the wee kind of short documentary on YouTube there a few months ago before I actually was sat down with Darren. It was a great job by the lads there, and I just found myself just getting sucked in, just turned into kind of a mini Newry City FC supporter, just watching it, just the journey from intermediate Premier into the Championship, and then Championship into the Premiership. It was just unbelievable. I think it was 4 promotions in 5 seasons.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't think Darren maybe gets the credit maybe he deserves for that kind of success, because he literally took over when they were rock bottom, and he had even said himself he didn't have any players,
No.
and then he basically had to instill a culture, that kind of winning mentality to get them through the divisions. And it's, I expected them to get through Intermediate B, no problem, but Intermediate A can be a tough enough league. It's one of those kind of leagues that, if you don't get out of quick enough, you could end up being stuck there. And yourself, you might sign a couple of decent players that will say, yeah, we'll do our best to help you out. Maybe if you don't get promoted, they might think, I don't really fancy another season in Intermediate A, but he's done a terrific job, hasn't he? And just even bringing, you think of the supporters that you've been getting this season, and the Friday nights at the showgrounds. He really seems to have just got everybody together, the players, the supporters, him sort of leading it all. He's just done a fantastic job. And I know I was kind of joking with him when I was speaking to him a few months back, calling him the Newry Jurgen Klopp, but he kind of is. He's kind of done, I'm not saying he's Jurgen Klopp, but the jobs are very, very similar, the way he's just connected the 3 major groups together, and the success has come with it.
Yeah. Well, you're 100% right there. When he has to get huge credit for what he done, because as you say, it's no easy task getting a team promoted from one league to another, but to do it 4 times, in such a short period of time, as you say, it needs to be commended. And as I said, Darren knows what it takes, and he's got that fire in his belly himself. From playing under him. He's a progressive manager. He just wants to keep pushing on all the time, but not only pushing on himself, he wants the club to push on, and he wants his players to push on. And with that, he knows that the supporters have our back, and there's a good bond there between players, coaches, supporters as well. And you can see it, even I said it, we had our awards night there last week, and I said a few words just at it, and I had said, at the start of this season and even in previous seasons there, the bond was really strong between players and supporters. But as this season progressed, it's just got greater and greater, to a point where, supporters are bringing their mates with them, and their mates are loving it as well, and they're bringing their families, and their families are loving it. And, if you probably look at the support we had at home in the first game of the season and compare to what we had on the last day of the season when we lifted the cup, it's probably increased tenfold.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all down to, what the club do themselves in the background, all the volunteers, but then that transcends into the players and onto the pitch, which is then passed on to the fans, and it's great to see.
Yeah, and long may it continue. And I suppose the aim this season was just to get promoted whatever way, but it must have been extra special, I suppose, going up as champions. I suppose you didn't want to go through that whole 2-legged playoff again. So was it extra special this time, I suppose, going up as champions?
Yeah, definitely. If you're going to go up, that's the way you want to do it.
Yeah.
albeit we made hard work of it toward the end, but we got there in the end, you know. But yeah, you definitely, we've been promoted through the playoff, and that in its own right is a fantastic way to get promoted, because it's the relief of, you've got the pressure of trying to compete against that Premiership team, but then you've got the relief of getting promoted at the end of the two legs.
Yeah.
But winning the cup and having something, to show for it at the end of the season and to celebrate with the fans, that's something different, and that's definitely the way you want to go up.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And, I think you were the best team in the league, but it was a tough league, wasn't it? When you look at, Anna had that they were a surprise package. I don't think too many people expected them to kind of stay up there, and Keir McGurgan done a great job there. You had obviously Loughgall, who were up there for large chunks, Ballinamallard as well. It wasn't so long ago they were in the Premier League for a good couple of seasons. So you had Ards, obviously that improved. I suppose they weren't really up near the top that long, but it was a really competitive. Harlan Wolf Welders as well, another tricky one.
Yeah.
It's tough league, and it looks as if even next season is going to be tougher when you think we're in points dropping down, and you've got Newington as well coming into it.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt it's a very tough league, really tough, and anybody's capable of beating anybody on their day in it, because you're going to some grounds and, they're tight grounds and the pitches aren't as good as the Premiership pitches, and there's a lot of games in it that are battles, and it's just about sort of gritting the teeth and putting the head down and working. You have to grind out results in it. And as you say there, there's quality players in the Championship. You've got the majority of players in the Championship have maybe played a lot of Premiership games in their time, and have maybe just moved down for one reason or another. So there's a lot of quality in there as well. And as you said there, you've got teams on your tails all the time putting pressure on you. The likes of Anna, they were a surprise package, but a fantastic team, and Kieran's done a brilliant job there with them. And as you say there, there's places like, Ballinamallard, you're never going to get an easy game. A Premiership team wouldn't get an easy game at Ballinamallard, so nobody in the Championship would either. And as you say then, also, it's going to be very competitive next year. It's more difficult than people think to get out of.
Yeah, it's a wee bit like the Championship in England. You've got probably 6, 7, maybe 8 teams that realistically, if they get a good start, could get promoted. And again, like we said there, if you don't get promoted, you could easily get stuck there for a couple of seasons. So he's done great to get up. And of course, you'd had a great cup run as well. I know there was a bit of controversy around the kind of quarterfinals, but let's not talk about that. You got to the semi-finals. What were you like as skipper? Were you kind of thinking, God, I've got a chance of Irish Cup here. I could be 2 wins away from playing Man United in the Intertoto Conference Shield. Is this what you were kind of thinking about? Well, I could be up against Sancho here.
Yeah, well, this is it. If you don't go into those, that's how we dig at United there. But we'll leave that because I'll have to agree with you on that one. But anyway, if you don't approach games with that sort of attitude, well, then you're setting yourself up for a fall. So yeah, we looked at it. And no disrespect to Ballymena, but you were playing Ballymena in the semi-final of an Irish Cup. It's probably one of the best opportunities, if not the best opportunity you'll ever get to get to a final of an Irish Cup. Because look, if we're being honest, if it's Glentoran or Linfield or even Larne the way they're going at the minute, it's not as easy a task, or you'd consider it in terms of looking in at their squad. So you're looking at Ballymena and saying, look, this is a team that you'd like to think you're going to be competing with next season in the Premiership. For maybe mid-table or just whatever. And so you say, right, you fancy your chances and you have to approach it in that way. And then if you got to a final, who knows what could happen if you got to a final. But it didn't work out like that on the night. We played really well. We gave a real good account of ourselves, but we were there to try and win the game. And unfortunately, one really good set piece, really good free kick, won the game in the end.
Yeah. And I suppose it kind of gives you a wee taster of what you're going to be up against next season. And of course it wasn't that long ago when you were in the Premier League, and I was kind of looking at past results, And Darren kind of touched on it when we were chatting to him. You know, there were so many games. I think there must have been maybe a dozen or so matches where you just lost by the odd goal.
Yeah.
Is that the difference, do you find, from when you move from Championship to Premier League? Those kind of wee small details, you know, in terms of, you know, if you get your opportunities, take them. You can't really pass up too many. And then I suppose on your end of things, the defensive side of things, you have to be concentrated 100% for 90 minutes.
Yeah, without doubt, you know, that's what it's all about. You know, you'll not get as many chances in the Premiership to score. So as you say, you have to take them when you get them, because you know fine rightly that if another team in the Premiership gets a chance against you, they'll more than likely take it and put it away. And as you said there, when we were previously in the Premiership, there were so many games, last kick of the ball or last few minutes, where we were maybe leading 1-0 or whatever, you know, or drawn one each, and we conceded really late. I remember against Linfield at the showgrounds, they scored a header at the back post, Chris Casement, literally in the last 2 seconds of the game to beat us. So and you know, there was a few games that season like that.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, probably just lack of experience, you know, on our part the last time. So we'll be hoping to rectify that this time when we go up.
Yeah. And do you feel you're kind of squad wise, do you think you're in a kind of better position to stay up? And is that going to be the aim next season, to stay up?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you get promoted, you know, it's always going to be your aim to stay up, obviously. But, you know, nobody's happy with a relegation battle. You know, that's not enjoyable for anybody. So we'd like to think that you could maybe try and push yourself on to stay above that relegation battle. And, you know, who knows what else could come from it if you can. But in terms of squad, you know, I definitely say the squad we have at the minute that won the Championship compared to the squad that got promoted the last time, we're definitely a lot more dynamic in terms of the young players we have at our disposal there. You know, the likes of young James Teelan, Noel Healy, John McGovern, those likes. And then you've obviously got the experience and quality of people like Daniel Hughes there.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Philly Donnelly, all them guys who are really creative and can really make things happen. You know, I'm not saying we didn't have players like that the last time, but you've probably got a little bit more flexibility there with the players at your disposal, and you've probably got a little bit more quality also. And then defensively, you know, we're pretty solid in defence, and we've got a lot of real good you know, cool heads at the back there. You've got Ryan McGivern who'll be coming back from injury, hopefully, and then you've got John Boyle there as well, you know, with years of experience. So yeah, I'd like to think we have a really good chance of avoiding that relegation battle, and even better if we can push on.
Yeah, and I suppose you'll be going up with full of confidence as well, because of course you were the Championship's best right back in the league.
Yeah, was I? But no, look, to be fair, I played most of the season at centre half, so I did. We started the season as a back three. We were 3-5-2 for the first part of the season, maybe the first 9 or 10 games, and I played on the right side of a three there. Had a few games then, or a part of the season at right back, and then due to injuries or whatever, I moved back into centre back towards the end of the season there. So yeah, I was spread across the back line a few times. I even played a couple of games at left back when Noel Healy was suspended or injured or whatever it may be. So yeah, I'm just delighted. It's always nice to get into the team of the year, you know, to a bit of recognition. But as I said it at our awards night as well. When I was, you know, I got Player of the Year at our awards night, and I said I'm not a huge fan of individual awards, because, you know, without your teammates, you're not going to get those awards. So it's a team game, and in a team sport, I think, you know, everybody should get recognition rather than 1 or 2 people, or even in our case 5 in the team of the year. But yeah, I suppose at my age you'll take what you can get.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And I suppose just to kind of touch on, you know, you're predominantly a full back then. For any kind of young fullbacks kind of that might be listening to the podcast, what way do you approach then? Say, for example, you're up against a speedy winger, or you're up against maybe one of those kind of inside forwards. They're not maybe hugging the line. They're trying to get in between you and your on the centre back right next to you. Or you come up against the left winger that's just kind of floating about the pitch, has kind of got a free role. How do you kind of approach the different types of left wingers when you're playing in your right back position?
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose that's a difficult question, but from my point of view, my thing was always work really hard in every game and communicate with whoever's playing around you. So if you're playing with a right winger in front of you and you're dealing with a tricky winger, there needs to be a lot of communication there, because there'll probably be overlapping from their full back. There'll probably be times when I'll need, help on the outside to try and keep a winger at bay or whatever. And then obviously your inside players as well, whoever your centre midfielders are and your centre half. So you need to communicate all the time and just make sure that you know exactly, and your teammates know exactly where those players are. And then, as I said, you need to be up for every game, because you're always going to come up against, if it's a tricky winger, they're always going to be technically really good. So if you're not on your game and you're not marking them and you're not tuned in and switched on, it's going to be difficult for you, and they will get the better of you at some stage. So yeah, it's just working hard in every game from my own point of view,
And what was I going to say to you? I was going to say about sort of tips for a fullback. Would you like to kind of that's what I was going to say. Would you, especially when you're up against maybe left wingers in kind of the Premier League, would you research them a wee bit before you kind of, the lead up to a game, or do you just kind of weigh them up kind of the first kind of 5 minutes? Or I suppose some left wingers you'll already be kind of familiar with, maybe from past experiences.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're lucky probably in the Premier League where you can go on to BBC Sport and you can watch the highlights of the previous games and sort of weigh them up and do a wee bit of research that way. And you'd be foolish not to do that. You'd be foolish not to give yourself the best chance. But as you said there, you need to weigh them up. And, sometimes you can be playing against a good player, but you'll know on the day, if they're up for it as much as you are, or vice versa. So, yeah, you need to, I always sort of set myself a target, when I'm playing. And I always did from when I was young. And I think my dad used to say it to me as well. He used to say to me, and it's probably an old cliche as well, I'd always try and win my first 3 headers, win my first 3 tackles, that sort of way. So you're sort of giving yourself edge and you're letting them know that, I'm here and I'm here for a game today. I'm not just going to let you do what you want. And I think that's important as a fullback. It's important to try and get the better of the wingers early on than letting them get a few runs at you.
Yeah. Oh, great stuff. And who would be the best left winger that you've come up against? Who's been kind of the trickiest that you think you've faced?
Well, the best player I've played against as a winger was, we played a friendly against Derry City when Paddy McCourt was there.
Oh.
And Paddy McCourt, I was marking him that night. Well, when I say I was marking him, I was
chasing him. Did you win your first 3 tackles, did you?
No, I didn't. I don't think anybody won any 3 tackles against him that night. He was on fire. I think he scored 3 or 4 against us. And it was at one stage, I remember him going right back into the left back position and taking a short kick out from the keeper. He dribbled full length of the pitch, played a 1-2 with an inside midfielder, nutmegged our centre half, and then dinked it over Andy Coleman in nets. And I remember just sitting, it was jaw dropping stuff and just thinking, wow, that was just before he moved over to Celtic.
Was that right?
So it was. So yeah, he was unbelievable. But in terms of Irish League football, Jordan Stewart, I always thought Jordan Stewart was really good. Especially before he went across the water when he was at Glentoran the first time. I remember marking him when I was at Warren Point, and I couldn't get near him, couldn't get within a yard of him for the full game. And I remember just thinking, wow, what a player.
Yeah, there's just sometimes, and I've faced them as well, there's just some players you just give your all, give 100%, but you just can't get anywhere near them, and sometimes you just have to accept it that they're just a top player, and then just hopefully nail them the next time that you play them.
That's it.
But no, happy days. And what about sort of do you have any aspirations to going into kind of coaching I know obviously you're firmly focused on playing for the next couple of years. I'm sure there's plenty of years left in the tank. But do you think
Yeah.
ahead to that, maybe after football? Is it something you'd like to maybe get involved in, like coaching, even
Yeah.
management or something like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not something I've thought about in depth, really. I've always sort of thought to myself, yeah, I think I might be able to maybe give it a go at some stage, but I'll not make a decision on that just yet. It's at the minute the thought of coaching doesn't interest me, because I still feel physically fit, and I'm always thinking, you know, compared to playing, standing on the sideline there, how does it measure up? And at the minute, I'm thinking nothing sort of compares with playing. So I suppose I'll cross that bridge when it comes.
Aye, unless you do like a wee Steve McLaren job, like a wee assistant.
That'd
Let
be all right,
let
wouldn't
let
it?
Ten Hag get all the grief, but you'll sit in the background and just, yeah, I think you should play a 3-5-2 today.
That's it.
Aye,
Just put your arm around the player's shoulders when they're upset. That'll
aye,
suit me all right.
yeah. So no, that's great. So we're going to get stuck into the Keepie Uppies. Now I did say this was a bit of a head wrecker, and I'm sure
Right.
it absolutely melted your head because you've played with some terrific players, I'm sure. So
Yeah.
uh, so with the Keepie Uppies, then well, this might be an easy one, but what's the best team you've played for?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the current Newry team. So I am, and just because of the camaraderie that we have there at the minute, and the mix with the young players and experienced players, and we've got a real good team spirit. I think everything, just this last season, coaching staff, there's a real good bond between coaching staff and players, real good bond between players and supporters. And it's just hard to beat that, so I'm gonna go with the current Newry team.
Great. What about best captain?
Best captain. I'm going to go with. I had a few captains in my time, sort of my earlier days with Newry, but when I think back, there's nobody really where I've said, you know, yeah, I remember that, or that stood out for me. So I'm going to go with Mark Hughes, who I actually took over Newry captaincy from, who left earlier this year. And the reason being is Hughes, he done lots and lots for the club in their sort of rise back to, dominance when they were in those lower leagues and that, so I'm going to go with him. He's a great lad to have. He was a great lad to have in the changing room. He done all his talking through his football, and then he worked really hard for the club outside of it.
And what about just to kind of touch on captaincy when you did get the captain's armband? That must have been a pretty proud moment for you and the family when you got it.
Yeah, it was great to get it, because I was vice captain to Hughesy, but I had been Newry captain previous before the club folded. So I had. So, that was disappointing for me at the time, because I remember thinking Pat McGibbon had given me the Newry captaincy
Hmm.
when he took over. And I was there for a couple of years as captain. I'm thinking this is great. And then the club folded, and I remember thinking to myself, will I ever captain a Premiership team again? Or even a Championship team? And lucky enough now I'm going to get the chance to.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Um, so what about then best goal scorer?
Yeah, best goal scorer. I'm going to go with, he's currently at Anna United, Stephen Murray. I played with him at Warren Point, and some of the guys who even playing with us now at the minute, we often talk about it. Stephen, he might be non-existent in games, but all he needed is one chance, and he'd put it in the net for you. I remember watching him in training one night, and I think at one point, I think he took something like 15 shots and he scored 14 of them, and the 15th one was just a wonder save from the keeper. So yeah, he's one of those guys, he only needs one or two chances and he'll stick it in the net for you. So that's where I went with him.
Happy days, the fox in the box. What
Yeah,
about
he's very good.
best touch?
Best touch has to be Daniel Hughes, Dingo. Very good. You could literally fire the ball at him any way you wanted with as many men around him as you could get, and he'd stop the ball and he'd come out of it with the ball. Really, he's fantastic ability to control the ball.
Great. What about best keeper?
Best keeper. So yeah, I thought about this, and Stevie Mcguire is brilliant. You know, me and Stevie are real good friends who's there at Newry at the minute.
I feel
But I'm
there's
going to
going to
go
be a
with
but
my...
here.
Yeah, but, you know, and Steve, and the reason why, it's because I've played with him from this, who I'm going to say now, because I've played with him from my youth at Midway,
Yeah.
right through, I'm going to go with Andy Coleman. So, Andy, you know, he's a fantastic player and real good work ethic, real high work ethic his whole career, you know, and a quality keeper. And, you know, Andy could play outfield for you as well with the feet that he has as well. You could pass him a ball back in any conditions and he'll control it and get out of trouble. So, Andy Coleman.
Yeah, well, he's went on to have a pretty good career. What
Yeah.
about best defender then?
Yeah, best defender has to be my mate John Boyle, who I'm playing with at the minute. Boiler is one of those players, you know, if you play against him, you mightn't think much of him, but when you play with him, you're thinking, you know, we couldn't do without him. And it's been like that there for a number of years, even when he was at Warren Point. You know, he's one of those players that you don't realise how good he is until you're actually playing alongside him. So I'll go with Boiler.
Okay. Best midfielder?
Best midfielder, I'm going to go with Liam Bagnall. I played with Liam Bagnall for a while, and just again, we were talking about Roy Keane earlier. You know, Bag's one of those players who, you know, in Irish League terms, I would compare to Roy Keane in terms of his attitude and his work ethic, and you know, his sheer will to win, and then really good on the ball as well. You know, he barely put a pass astray. So yeah, really good player, Bags.
Well, Bags will be absolutely delighted you're comparing him to Roy Keane. Happy days.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. As I said,
Wouldn't mind that myself.
in Irish League terms, I said.
What about best striker?
Best striker, I'm going to go with Rambo, Stephen Hughes, brother of Daniel Hughes, who plays for us at the minute. He's not playing anymore, but I played with him at Newry under Pat McGibbon, under Warren Point, and then back at Newry as well for a few seasons under Darren. And Rambo's just one of those players. He's just an all-rounder as a striker. You know, he scores fantastic goals. He brings players in. He's a fox in the box. And, you know, again, when the chips were down, you knew you could fire the ball at Rambo and he'd get you out of trouble. So I'm going to go with him.
Happy days. Next two then, best left foot and best right foot.
Yeah, best left foot. It's split between two current players in the squad. And I'm going to say it's Tommy Lockhart and Ryan McGivern. The two, Ryan McGivern, you know, is different in terms of his distribution from the back line. It's just something else. You know, you can see why he's played at the level he has played. With his ability on the ball and his ability to use that left foot to bring players into play. You know, when he can literally, he plays the ball from the back into the strikers and they don't have to move. The ball nearly controls itself for him. He's that good at it. And then Tommy Lockhart with his set pieces for us at the minute, you know, free kicks and corners. You know, if you tell Tommy to put the ball somewhere, he'll put it there. So, and then best right foot, I'm going to go with Richard Clark at Ballymallard at the minute. Played with him at Newry for 5 or 6 years before he moved to Glentoran. And Clarkey again, you know, he picked the ball up off the centre halves and he can spray it anywhere in the field that you would want it. And again, whips in a good set piece as well.
Great job. What about best manager?
Yeah, best manager. So as I said earlier, I've been really lucky in my career. I remember sitting down with Gareth McCullough. Do you know Gareth?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember sitting down with Gareth McCullough not so long ago and counting through the managers that I've had in my career with Newry alone. And I think I've had like 12 managers with Newry and then 2 when I was at Warren Point. So I've had 14 in total, which is a lot across just 1 or 2 clubs, you know. But I really enjoyed my time under Barry Gray and Jerry Flynn, and even then, as I said, Pat McGibbon. Before I started playing under Darren Mullen, I would have said Pat McGibbon was my favourite manager to play under. But again, just going back to the way things have gone and, you know, the way Darren has conducted himself in Newry's race back to the Premiership, and his effect that he has on the squad, you know, he knows what it takes for that, build a good changing room and to build a good squad. And, you know, he's very knowledgeable in football terms as well. You know, a lot of people say, you know,
Well, he's a Liverpool fan, so
he's a great
yeah.
attitude and whatever, but you know, he knows the recipe it takes for promotion, and it's hard to beat that in a manager, you know, and he has a good relationship with his players, so I'm going to go with Darren Mullen.
And what was you had a wee spell then under Roy McCready? What was he like? Obviously, he's been there, done that with a lot of clubs. But what sort of a manager was he? Was he kind of was he a bit standoffish? Was he a motivator? Was he, you know?
Yeah, well, Roy, yeah, as I say, I just came in as a kid.
Yeah.
And you know yourself, when you're coming in as a kid, you're kind of half scared of the manager.
He looked scary.
More than anything. You know, yeah, he did. And he was, you know, he was quite abrupt, and, you know, in terms of that there, he was old school.
Yeah.
But I only played under him for about a season and a half until he left. You know, so it wasn't that long altogether. But yeah, as I say, you know, he treated me really well, and, you know, I made my debut under him in the squad, so, you know, no complaints there. But yeah, I've had a few players. You know, Roy Coyle, I played under Roy Coyle as well.
Oh, yeah.
He's well decorated, you know, in the Irish League also. So yeah, a lot of experienced managers there.
Yeah, great. Next up then is loves a hard challenge.
Loves a hard challenge. Has to be wee Noel Healy. I don't know. Have you ever seen Noel play for us?
I haven't, but I've heard he had a pretty good season last year but I haven't actually seen him play. But
yeah, well, we know he got in the team of the year, and he actually got championship player of the year as well. But he came in as a kid into the squad about 17, 18 years of age, and I remember his first training session, he lifted about 3 or 4 of the more senior players with tackles. And I remember thinking to myself, yes, that's what we need here, you know, that sort of way.
Yeah.
And he just kicked on from there, you know, he just works hard, but, you know, he loves a hard challenge, but not only in games against opposition, he loves it in training as well. And, you know, he trains as he plays, which is what you want to see.
Yeah. That's great. He seems a real nice fella as well, good character.
Yeah, that's it. All Noel wants to do in life is play football. That's it. You know, he doesn't do anything else outside of it. He's just a real nice guy, just concentrates on his football and does what he has to do.
Happy days. So the next two then, quickest player and best all-round player.
Yeah. Quickest player, I'm going to go with John McGovern. John is rapid, so he is the minute. Although in saying that, he's had a bit of competition with wee James Teelan there this year. But yeah, John's just an athlete. You know, he looks after himself, you know, and with that, he's naturally sort of gifted in terms of his physique as well. You know, so yeah, John's flying. Brilliant. And then best all-round player, I'm going to go with Big Boiler again, John Boyle. As I say, unless you've played with him, you wouldn't understand, but he's got everything. He's got great feet, great passing ability, you know, he's defensively very good, and he's got a great footballing head, and looks after himself as well. You know, sometimes you can come across, if you didn't know him, you know, you might look at Boiler and say he doesn't look fit, but he's one of the fittest men in our squad.
Mm-hmm. And to go back to John McGovern, you know, another player who had a really good season. I suppose a big plus as well that he's staying on this season at least. So I'm sure that was good news.
Yeah, it's a great boost. You know, you want to keep as many of the current squad as you can, to give yourself as good a chance. But when you've got players like John, you know, with honours for Northern Ireland under 21s, and you know, you've got bigger clubs sniffing around them, you know, and trying to sign them. You know, it's always great that they choose to stay and, you know, maybe get a year's experience with us and then possibly move on after that. You know, who knows? Yeah. But I think definitely with John, you know, he chooses. He's a smart guy. He's a smart kid, and he makes decisions, you know, using his head. And you know, I think he knows himself that a year's experience with Newry and plenty of game time will only stand to him in the long run.
Yeah. And it goes back to, I suppose, what you said earlier about that kind of culture that you've established within the group, that tight-knit group as well. I think that's probably another pull for him as well to stay, because you don't get that at every club, you know.
It is, yeah. It's a big thing, you know, when you've got even the likes of James Teelan there, who came in at the start of this season. He was unknown to most of us, and, you know, only for him we mightn't have done as well as we did, along with John and lots of the others as well. But yeah, speaking to them guys at the end of the season, they won't want to go anywhere because of the camaraderie and the team spirit and the group that we have there.
Yeah, great. And then the last two then, player that got better with age, and then player who always gives 100%.
Yeah, so player that got better with age, I'm going to go with Stevie Mcguire, our current goalkeeper. Stevie, not like me saying this, but Stevie's 37 at the minute. And, Stevie, he's been playing Irish League football from, again, he was 17, 18 years of age as well. And, in the earlier days, he was maybe on the fringes of first teams or whatever it may be. And the last few seasons, even the year we got promoted to the Premiership last time, Stephen has been magnificent. And the season past there, but he's at the most clean sheets in the league. We've had the best defensive record, and he's played a huge part in that there. So Stevie Mcguire. And then 100% player. This is a guy that he lives up to his name. Plays with us at the minute, Stevie Moan. All he does is moan and complain about everything, but one thing for sure is when Moaner gets out onto the training pitch, he gives 100%. But yeah, you ask any of the players in our squad, who's the biggest moan, and they'll say Stevie Moan.
There's always one, isn't there? Always one.
Unbelievable. Yeah. You couldn't even explain what this man's like, but as you say, when he gets onto the pitch, he gives it all.
Yeah, you need a few guys like that. Yeah. And then you talk about Steve Mcguire being 37. Sure, that's young in goalkeeping terms. Look at one of your coaches, Mickey Keenan. Sure, he was still playing when he was near 50.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think Mickey still holds the record for playing in the Champions League in the qualifying stages, doesn't he?
He's
the oldest player ever. Yeah, with Portadown. I think he was 46 or something when he played in a Champions League qualifier or European Cup qualifier or something like that. Yeah, Mickey trains with us still.
Yeah.
So he does, if he'd be hoping that one of the keepers can't fill in, he'd be standing there with the gloves and the boots on him. I'm not joking, he's diving around like he's 20 years of age.
He's probably got those big massive steel studs, hasn't he, that would just destroy your ankle.
Yeah, I think the boots that Mickey's wearing, I don't think they make them anymore. They're that old.
He probably doesn't even wear gloves as well.
No, he does. I think he started wearing them.
No, but he was some keeper. I remember I would have been a Glenavon supporter way back in the day, and then I kind of lost touch with them just because they're my local side. And right. I remember he would have been doing nets for Portadown, I think, back then as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant keeper, and the fact that he's still playing his mid-40s is was fantastic. But it must also be great to have someone like him within the club that has that affiliation with Newry and that kind of passion for Newry as well still involved. Because I remember him even when Newry had to start way at the bottom coming up against us, and I remember he was setting out the cones for the lads warm up before the match. And still obviously involved now, but obviously he's got that professional attitude that he would have had from obviously a player, and I'm sure he probably takes that into his role in the background staff.
Without doubt there, because it's himself and Damien McCory are the two goalkeeping coaches down there at the minute, and they bounce off each other really well.
Yeah.
And the experience that they're giving the young keepers coming through down there, the training standard or the quality, it's second to none. And Mickey's attitude, he doesn't speak very often, but when he does speak, everybody listens. That sort of way.
Yeah.
Even at his age, I'd be driving down through town, going to work in the mornings or whatever it may be, and you see Mickey out for his morning run, or he'd be home in the evenings and he'd pass you on one of the hills. He's running flat out, so still has that attitude, wants to keep himself fit, because he's got a big game coming up now against the Liverpool Legends.
That's right, I've seen his name in the team sheet, yeah.
So he'll be buzzing for that. I wouldn't say Mickey's sleeping these nights with excitement.
Happy days. So yes, I think that's all the Keepie Uppies. I think that was enough. It was Richie that put all that together, so that's great.
Right.
Shout out to quite a few boys. So the last wee thing then we're going to run through is the Wheel of Berber.
Right.
So the Wheel of Berber, it's as I said, it's just kind of a hot topic of debate that's been talked about. So just get your opinion of it. Berber is named after there was a player in our Oxford Sunnyside team, Sean Lavery. He was over at Leeds for a few years and then came back to play for Oxford Sunnyside. And the reason he got
Right.
Berber was because he had a touch like Berber, he had a shot like Berber, and he also tracked back like Berber. There was
Right.
absolutely no movement whatsoever, but a brilliant
Yeah.
footballer.
Yeah.
So, the hot topic, since we've got you on and you're predominantly a right fullback, there's been a lot of chat since Liverpool's Champions League defeat, which I'm sure you're delighted about Trent Alexander-Arnold. It just seems to be one week he's the best right back in the world, and then as soon as he
Yeah.
makes a mistake, he's absolutely rubbish. He can't defend. So
Yeah.
what's your opinion as a fullback? Putting your Man United connections aside, Trent
Yeah.
Alexander-Arnold, is he a world class right back? Is he an average right back, or is he somewhere in between? What's your take on him on his defensive and his attacking abilities?
Yeah, it's hard. It's one of those things. It's hard to call because we don't know what he's been told to do by Klopp. Obviously, by looking in, we know that it's very physically demanding, getting up that wing all the time, being expected to be a second winger, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of teams are doing at the minute. So that in itself is very physically demanding on a player. You couldn't expect any player to run up and down the wing all day, put crosses into the box, work like a right winger, and then get back and defend like a orthodox right back either, that sort of way. But I would definitely say he's world class in terms of, competing for a place there with England. But there's also, you've got what do you call it, Chelsea there,
Reece
James.
James, yeah.
Yeah, Reece James. He's very good. There's a few real good right backs there at the minute. You even got Kieran Trippier, are all sort of similar type players, but some of them might be better defensively. I think Reece James is better defensively than Trent, but I think Trent's better at going forward. So it's hard to call. It's one of those things, you need to know what the discussion is in the changing room first, I would say, as a fullback. If the manager's telling him, I want you to get up that wing and I want you to get as many crosses in as possible and I want you to be like a second winger, well then, is that what he wants him to do mainly? Or, you go back to maybe the United teams, the successful United teams, and you had your Gary Neville, who was a fantastic defensive right back. But when you needed him to go forward, he went forward and he done what he needed to do. So I suppose it's open to opinion, isn't it? What's your thoughts on it?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think he's not kind of your typical right back like from the Gary Neville days, because you kind of touched on it as well earlier when you were talking about communicating to your right winger. He would have had David Beckham in front of him, and David would have been back kind of, I suppose, tracking the opposing left back when the other team were attacking. So he would have had that bit of support. Whereas with Trent, with Salah, he's not really a right winger. He's almost like a right-sided forward, and he's quite, Liverpool play very high up, so he is exposed a lot down that side. And it's actually one of the midfielders that's always having to maybe shift across to kind of cover any space. And as you said, then Trent, when we're attacking, is expected to nearly be a right midfielder, and at times even he's coming into central midfield positions. I think maybe Klopp maybe gets him to kind of fill in those positions because his past ability is so good, but equally it's leaving him exposed, And that's probably where you got caught out on Saturday night. But then the guy who was the right winger for Real Madrid, it was a shot that really essentially he was hitting, and yourself, sometimes you can get caught out easy enough when you're seeing the opposing winger hitting a shot. You're expecting a shot and it turns into a cross, and you're kind of flat-footed for that second or two, and that's all it takes,
Yeah.
I think he will. In my opinion, I think in a couple of years' time he'll be the best right back in the world. But I just think defensively he just needs to just sharpen up a wee bit. But it's tough, as I say, the way Liverpool play. They're so attack minded. They're pressing so high. It's you're going to get caught out, and it's kind of that risk and versus reward, But in terms of attacking ability, see his passing, unbelievable, sometimes. And you notice when he's not playing how good he is. There isn't that fluidity at that right hand side, when he's not in the starting team, But but I think that's just the nature of the beast, the way things are. Social media, it only takes one mistake, and suddenly, everybody's saying he's hopeless, and no doubt, and couple of months' time he has a couple of good games, everybody will be saying the opposite.
Well, this is it. You know, football, it's fickle enough. Everybody's always looking for a scapegoat.
Yeah.
You know, and as I said to you, we don't know what the conversation is. You know, as captain to him, I want you getting forward, and I want the centre half to step across and cover that space for you. And maybe the centre half isn't doing that for him and helping him out or whatever. So, yeah, you can't really tell. But you know, if he keeps playing, then he's obviously doing what Klopp's asking him to do.
Yeah,
that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think if you're playing the number of games he's playing for Liverpool and you played 3 European Cup finals, you're doing all right. You know, you mustn't be too shabby.
This is it.
But here, thanks a million for taking the time out, Darren, to speak to us. That was great chat, great insight as well to the kind of right back position and kind of what you need, and I think you just touched on all the important things about working hard, looking after yourself, you know, eating the right things, drinking the right things, and I think me and Richie maybe need to listen to that as well, and maybe wouldn't be playing for Oxford Sunnyside over 35s now.
I think there's a few.
That's where we're at now, over 35s football.
Is it? Yeah,
aye.
Over 35.
That's when you really feel old.
If it helps you out, I could play in that age category as well. So,
here, I'd take you. The only thing is that I play right back, so you know it means you're going to take my position when you come down.
That's me screwed then.
But no, here, great chatting to you, and here, all the best for next season. We'll be looking out for you, and fingers crossed you avoid that relegation dogfight, and just keep challenging for those European places. And,
well, this is it. That's what it's all about.
You know, maybe that dream of playing at Old Trafford could come true.
It might do, yeah. It might do, hopefully. If United keep going as badly as they do, we might get to play United at some stage. No, but here, thanks very much. You know, I really appreciate being asked to come on, and it's been a good experience, so thank you.
All right. You look after yourself now. Good luck.
All right. Talk soon. Bye. Bye.